Good morning, Knicks Nation. Today is Monday, the 7th of June, 2021. Happy Monday to you. I hope you are COVID free and your family also, and that your needs of you and your family are being met today. Blessings upon those that work in the healthcare field, seeking to save lives, even at the expense of their own oftentimes. Blessings upon those that pick up garbage for us to keep our places clean. Blessings upon those also that make deliveries for us for our convenience, who we take for granted. Double blessings on those seeking to deliver boys and girls, men and women, teenagers and children from the clutches of sex, slave, and human trafficking operations, which are global in scope and into the billions of dollars in profits. Blessings upon those seeking to deliver these people in these terrible situations, and curses upon those that support these industries. Finally, blessings on those helping the homeless, 500,000 men, women, children, families, veterans sleeping on the streets of America today, and millions more around the world, human beings with no roof over their heads. Blessings upon those who are helping and those themselves in those situations, for theirs is the kingdom. There was no more basketball games, so what are we doing? Well, last year, before the season started, what we were doing is we were reviewing several things that were important for the New York Knicks going into that season. And we're going to do the same thing going forward. Today, we're going to be talking about decisions the Knicks make as to who they're bringing back and who they're not going to bring back, as well as the salary cap and things that they will have available to them going into the season. Very important season coming up for a variety of reasons. We'll talk about that. Also, going forward after today, we're going to be dealing with various trade scenarios involving specific players that may help the Knicks or that the Knicks may be interested in. And we'll talk about that in future videos. But today I want to talk about who from the roster will return, who will probably not return, and what the Knicks are going to need going forward. First off, we need to understand who our coach is. Tom Thibodeau is our coach. Now, at the beginning of last season, we all knew in Knicks Nation that the Knicks had a lot of young players, and we wanted to see those young players get significant minutes for their development. We were hearing from the beginning of last season, though, that Tom Thibodeau is always in win-win-win-now mode. And that proved to be a combination of true. Whereas he played his veterans, he got veterans and played them heavily minutes. But he also picked a couple of young players to put in his rotation. And we expect that to continue even in a more significant way because the Knicks did end up with the 4th seed in the East. That being in mind, the expectation for everyone involved is that they take another step forward, that this was not an anomaly, even though they were projected to only win 22 or 23 games this past season. They won 41 games and were 4th in the East. So the projection now, the expectation now is to improve upon that, particularly when it looks like we're going to get an 82-game season. So the equivalent of the 41 wins would be somewhere around 45 or 46 wins in an 82-game season. I would expect the Knicks to be in that range going forward if they make the right moves. So what are we going to do? Well, first of all, we had to decide who is coming back. So on the active roster right now, the guaranteed contracts or contracts that they will certainly pick up, we got Julius Randle, who's going to be around 22.9, almost 23 million with the incentives that he earned from this past season, being an all-star, being a most improved player, and possibly all NBA. They haven't come out with that list yet. There's RJ Barrett, who's going to be paid $8 million this coming season. There's Obi Toppin, who's going to be paid $5 million. Kevin Knox is going to be paid $5.8 million. They have a possible guarantee, not fully guaranteed. Luka Vildoza, who they brought over at 3.3. Emmanuel Quickly at 2.2, Mitchell Robinson at 1.8. They have a non-guarantee on Norvel Pell at 1.7. And that's basically who we have going forward as guaranteed contracts. Derrick Rose and Frank Nilokina. Frank is really on a qualified offer of about $8 million, but they're going to have to make a decision on him by July 31st. His cap hold is $18 million. So they're definitely going to make a decision on what to do with Frank Nilokina. Now, There's all kind of things we can speculate about, but let's go by what actually happened. Frank started off in the rotation this past season, in the 10-man rotation. He got hurt and he lost his spot in the rotation. Then going forward, they got Derrick Rose. This is before they had Derrick Rose. They got Derrick Rose, and then Frank could not break the rotation again. He had brief stints pretty much the second half of the season after he came back from injury. He played pretty well. Thibodeau said he was going to be situational, and we understood what that meant with Frank. Whenever he needed a defensive stop, even if it was for 30 seconds, he put Frank in, which is not ideal for Frank. But that being the case, the Knicks have a decision to make. Should they let Frank become an unrestricted free agent? Should they try to trade to get something for Frank? Or should they sign Frank and keep him as a long-term piece? Frank would be, if he was signed, the first drafted point guard from the Knicks in about 20 years to actually re-sign. So the last one was the guy they got from Florida State. I forgot his name. I can see him. He was the Heisman Trophy winner. But that was the last guy they re-signed from his rookie deal as a point guard. So we don't know. I suspect they're going to either trade for something for Frank, include Frank in the trade, or sign him. They're not going to let him walk away as an unrestricted free agent. They're just not going to do that. So either they sign him, and I'm not sure. I mean, the qualifying offer is $8 million. So you can figure, okay, if they signed him for 3 years, it would be $24 million odd, or 4 years would be $32 million. If they decide to sign a qualifying offer is $8 million, I expect him to be in that range. Or they'll include him in the trade, because there are certain players that are now possibly available that the Knicks are thinking about going after. We'll talk about that in a later video. So at this point, my guess would be they would sign Frank, because even if they sign him, they can still trade him, right? So they can sign him and still include him in the package. So I think they'll bring him back. I think it is a guarantee. It's a lock. They're bringing back Derrick Rose. The number, we don't know what the number is going to be. He's going to be a backup guard for the Knicks. He's going to be a backup point guard. I don't think Frank Nilokina is going to play a point guard. Speaking of Frank, before we go off the Derrick, but I don't think Frank's going to be a point guard going forward. I think he's going to be a utility type of player that's used to guard multiple positions and play off the ball. I think they'll probably look to develop him as a 3-and-D guy, because that's more with his jump shot now coming into his catch and shoot jump shot was very good this year. It was over 45%, and he ended the well before this season. He ended well the previous season. So working with Thibodeau, if he's going to remain on the team, I expect him to be more of a 3-and-D guy. And so that would be his role. Derrick Rose, on the other hand, is going to be a pure point guard for the Knicks, maybe an off guard depending on who he's playing with, but he'll be a point guard. He'll be a backup point guard. And from what we saw this year, he'll be a very valuable piece coming off the bench, off the Knicks bench. So I think we're going to see that. Julius Randle, if I am the Knicks, I approach him about an extension now. 2 reasons. Number one, the extension would not kick in until next season. So you'd still have flexibility this season to do some moves if you wanted to. Number two, he would cost $106 million over 4 years if we extended him now. If we waited till next year, he might become an unrestricted free agent. I don't think the Knicks want Julius Randle to become an unrestricted free agent. After the year that he had, the improvement that he made this year, at the very least, he's a top tier second option. At the very least, some people are, crapping on him because he didn't come through in the playoffs. But I think he still has, based on what he did in terms of his development this year, which was phenomenal. If he puts that type of effort in again, I expect him to be even better next year. Now, I don't know if that makes him a superstar. I don't know. He's not a superstar now. I would say he is definitely a star. Listen, any guy, any player in the NBA that has multiple 40-point games in a season and is the leader of their team that was expected to not make the playoffs but end up in the 4th seed of either conference is a star. Period. Let me say that again. Take Julius Randle's name out of it. Any player, ex-player, has 2 or 3 or 4 multiple 40-point games in a season, his team was expected to be in last place. He leads his team as a 20-10-5 guy to the 4th seed. That guy's a star. What would make him a superstar is to do what Kawhi Leonard just did. I expected Dallas to beat the Clippers. I said that. I expected Dallas to beat the Clippers because of the way Luka was playing. But Kawhi had 45 in Game 6 to lead his team there, and then they close it out in Game 7. That's a superstar. Okay? That's a superstar. Julius Randle, whether he takes that step yet or not, I don't want to guess because I didn't expect him. I wanted them to trade him before the season. I did not expect him to come in with that type of mindset to get better on that level. Now, Julius's weaknesses, we know in the playoffs was the basketball IQ is not always there. Not that Julius is not an intelligent human being. When you listen to him talk, he's a very intelligent young man. Problem is his emotions take over during the course of a basketball game. And his basketball IQ sometimes goes out the window when crap gets in his head. Either the referees or opposing players get in his head, and then he's no good. Okay, he starts to over dribble. He starts to throw bad passes. He starts to hesitate on shots he shouldn't hesitate on. All of that happened. He starts to miss defensive assignments. It just goes bad when it goes bad with Julius. But when he's good, as I mentioned just now, he's very good. So at the very least, to me, if you bring in a top tier free agent, a guy that's a dog. When I mean a dog, I mean a guy that'll win you some games. He's going to add 5 more wins to your total because he's on your team. You know, like a Chris Paul, a Kyle Lowry, or Kawhi Leonard. Those guys, or Damian Lillard, those guys, Julius will become better. He's going to become that much better. Yeah, listen, also he showed this year how much of a leader he is. He was the leader of this team. And as the leader, he was also very humble. You saw him oftentimes counseling and coaching up Obi Toppin, the guy that would take his place. So Julius is a lot more mature than people think. I think he would have no problem. If you bring in a guy like we're going to talk about this later again on another video, but if you bring in the Damian Lillard or you bring in the Kyle Lowry, Julius Randle respects these guys. He has no problem. Any player, generally, when you have another guy come in that player respects, especially a guy like Randle, he'll play the second role. He would have a problem if you brought in a Colin Sexton, okay, who is trigger happy. He's a dog now, but he's trigger happy. That might be a problem for Julius, playing second fiddle to a kid like that. See? So it depends on what you're talking about, right? Now you bring in Alonzo Ball. He's friends with Lonzo Ball. They know each other from the Lakers and from New Orleans. So that would probably work out. He respects Lonzo Ball. So that depends. So he can play a second fiddle. So with that all being said, I'm the Knicks management. I offer him the 106. And if I'm Julius Randle, I might sign that and have the 4th year as a player option. Just in case, he moves to that next level and he wants to get big money in 3 years. So that's what I would think. He could wait and just go unrestricted next year. I think they'll work something out this year because it'll give the Knicks more flexibility. It'll solidify Julius on this team. I don't think he's a $200 million guy. That's to me reserved for superstars. He's not that, but he's a definite star. He's proven that this year. So I think he should sign an extension this summer for the $106 million and go ahead and do that. RJ Barrett, we don't have to worry about until the beginning of the following season when we got to look at qualifying offers for him. And so now you're dealing with, okay, so Obi Toppin's going to be back. I mean, unless they trade him, Obi showed everybody, that he can improve this year. He steadily improved. He's a rookie, even though he's an older rookie. He was a rookie and he got better as the year went on. He could see he got more confident. And not only that, what else we saw was Tom Thibodeau started trusting him in more situations. That was the biggest tell right there. All the way into deep in the playoffs, he was playing Obi Toppin not good minutes, but more minutes than the beginning. Beginning of the season, he getting 5, 6, 7 minutes. The end of the season, he was, verging on 14, 15 minutes. So, I think he stays unless, again, he's needed in a trade for a superstar. That's possible. But other than that, he comes back. Now, he has to get more minutes next year. He's got to. Okay. He has shown to me that he has the chops. He had the talent. He's got the skill level to go off in the NBA. He really does. And so, he's also shown Thibodeau, more importantly, the willingness to play high IQ defense. And he did that. He got a lot better on that end from the beginning of the season. He was doing a lot of bonehead stuff in the beginning of the season. To the end of the season, he had learned a lot. That being the case, we don't have to worry about his contract. He's set for another 2 or 3 years, 3 years, right? So, but you got Julius Randle. Julius Randle is a 4 that can sometimes play a 5. That's who he is. Okay? He's a 4 that can sometimes play a 5 in a pinch. Julius could play the 5. But because now he's an established star, he's a 4. So where does that leave Obi? We got to get Obi some minutes. And to me, in order for Obi to get more minutes, he's going to have to play multiple positions. He can play 4, some, because Julius is going to get the minutes at 4, and then you got Taj Gibson as well. He can play some 5, which is going to bring me to Nerlens Noel in a second. And I think we should try him at 3. I'm not sure he can guard 3s. That's the problem I have. He has the length and the athleticism on the offensive end of the floor to overwhelm 3s. But can he guard a 3? That's the problem. Can he guard a 3? That's going to be the question. Okay, that's going to be the question. If he can, I think the Knicks can find him minutes in the second unit, or starting him at the 3 with Julius. That's a possibility. Okay, if he can really play the 3. He's not his natural position. But this is not a perfect situation. It's not by any means a perfect situation. In a perfect situation, you start him, right? But you got Julius Randle. So what you going to do? Trade him? You might. But if you want to keep him, you gotta put him out there. Now, I think they should keep him, but if the Knicks want to move up in this draft to get one of the top 4 kids in this draft, they would have to trade Obi Toppin. They would have to trade their picks, obviously, and trade Obi Toppin. Because whoever the team is, that the top 4 teams are going to probably be the worst 4 teams. So you're talking what? Detroit, right? Cleveland, right? I don't know. You took Detroit, Cleveland. Who else was down at the bottom? Washington, maybe? No, they made the playoffs. Who else is in the bottom? Let's see. Detroit, Cleveland. Hold on. Let me see here. Standings. Let's see. So we're talking about Chicago, Toronto, Cleveland, Orlando, Detroit. Now, Orlando wouldn't use Obi because they got Jonathan Isaac coming back. Detroit could use him. I don't care what it is. Cleveland could use him. They could use talent, period. Toronto, they got Siakam. They got Eddie Packham. But Chicago, they just traded for Vucevic. And I don't know if they're going to keep Lowry marketing. That's a possibility. See, so if the Knicks wanted to move up in the draft, they would probably have to trade Obi Toppin to do that. Because if I'm a GM from another team, if I'm, Minnesota or Detroit or Toronto or Chicago, and I'm in the top 4, and you want my pick, we're going to start with both your draft picks and Obi Toppin. That's what I would do. Okay. And then on one of those teams, he would get 25 minutes a game. He would. So, yeah. If not, they keep him and they try to play him. They try, like I said, to put him in multiple positions to play him with Julius Randle, and, and when Julius is resting at the 4, all of that. Right? That's Obi. So now Nerlens Noel. He is not guaranteed any money. He played his butt off this past season. He stepped in when Mitchell Robinson got hurt and was a defensive anchor. He really was. Now, in the playoffs, he didn't perform as well. But you got to remember, he was hurt. He hurt his ankle, and he was still playing. If it was the regular season, he might have been sitting during that time, but it's the playoffs. So he was out there playing. He was a step or half a step slow, and that cost us because he couldn't cover the ground he would normally be able to cover, and it cost us. So I don't blame him for the playoff performance so much because he's a backup center and he was hurt. Okay, Mitchell Robinson will be back. Mitchell Robinson is the starter. Mitchell Robinson is better. Okay. Now, question is, what about Nerlens? Do we want to bring him back? I would, but the cost. He played for $5 million this year. I don't think he plays for $5 million next year. I think, you might think I'm crazy, if I'm Nerlens, if I'm his agent, I'm talking to Portland. Why? If Dame stays, they're going to have to make a change at the 5. Nurkic, whatever his name is, he got done up. They need somebody that's a defensive stopper at that 5 spot. They had to sign Whiteside, but I guess it didn't work out. But if I'm Nerlens, I could go there, and maybe I could get, 3 years, 36. He missed out on $70 million a couple of years ago. Maybe I could get 3 years, 36, 3 years, 40 or something like that. What I'm saying is I think we probably won't keep Nerlens because we won't be able to afford him. We won't want to use our cap space to do that, which means that you're gonna lose him, but you're gonna have Mitchell Robinson. And now that brings me to the next guy. You're going to bring back Taj Gibson because that is one of Thibodeau's guys. Taj played his heart and soul out this year. I think he's got another year or two to be able to do it at that level. He was in phenomenal shape, and he played great defense. He played very high IQ basketball. I think he continues to do that. And so I think they bring back Taj Gibson. I'm thinking Taj is probably 2 years, 12. I think they bring him back 2 years, 12 million, 6 a year. I'm thinking that's a good number for him. D Rose, they'll bring back 2 years, 16. That's probably what they'll do for D Rose, $8 million a year. The Knicks will have about 60 to 65 million in cap space. Let's be conservative, say 60. So they can do that. So they can pay Derrick Rose $8 million and they can pay Taj Gibson $6 million. I think that's what they'll probably do. That's the numbers I'm thinking. 2-year deals. I don't see anything longer for them at that age than a 2-year deal. Okay. Alfred Payton won't be back. I would be shocked if they brought Alfred Payton back. Tom Thibodeau, because of his loyalty and his stubbornness. Now, people hate his stubbornness. It gets on my nerves too. I'm not going to front, but in part, he's stubborn on everything, but some things he's stubborn on is because this is what he's used to, and it works out, and some things like this, it didn't. Okay? He played Alfred Payton too many minutes this season, and I feel like it cost development of a Frank Nilokina. It cost wins that we might have gotten if he wasn't playing him, riding him like that. Okay? Alfred Payton is not a scrub. I would not call him a scrub. He's a backup point guard. Okay? He is not a starter that needs to be playing 30 minutes a game. He's a backup point guard. He's Ish Smith. If he's that, he's Ish Smith. Okay? Or what McConnell was back in Philly when he was in Philly before he went to Indiana. That's what Alfred Payton is. And we have plenty of that with Derrick Rose. We don't need that. We have plenty of that with IQ. So we don't need that. I don't expect him to return. And then, of course, he did totally disappear when it came to playoff time. Even before that, a couple of weeks before the playoffs, he was just, I don't know if he was hurt, but he was just not there, man. He just wasn't there. So I don't expect Payton to return. Kevin Knox is under a guaranteed $5.8 million contract. I expect him to return. Why? Because he's from Kentucky. That's why. Because John Calipari, Worldwide West, they got a connection. Because Kenny Payne is on the staff. Kevin Knox is going to get a full 4-year opportunity here. So he is going to return. I'd be surprised if they traded him because he is a Kentucky guy. I'd be surprised if they traded him. But, he needs to come through, man. It's time. This is his 4th year. This past season, he's only 21. He's not a grown man yet. He's only 21. Okay. And he'll be 22 soon. So, it's time, I'm thinking this summer is his summer. It's going to be a very important summer for him and a very important season for him coming up. So he's got to show what he's got this time. Okay. That's him. Reggie Bullock, I expect to be back. What I like about Reggie Bullock being back is that Reggie Bullock is a really good defender. He's a spot-up shooter, even though in the playoffs he also disappeared. He had a nut in one of the playoff games against Atlanta. Like, he didn't score. Can't have that. Not from your starter. So I think, though, Reggie Bullock is at least a solid bench guy. Solid bench guy you can bring on to play defense and hit spot-up shots. Thibodeau loves him, right? So I think he comes back, and I think his contract is going to be reasonable. He's 30 years old. I don't expect anything more than 3 years, $24 million for him. I'm thinking 3. That's the thing about that. He's very reasonably priced. I think 3 years, $24 million at the most. If they sign for more than that, I'd be surprised. But at the most, so he comes back. Taj comes back. Derrick Rose comes back, and Alec Burks. Let's talk about Alec Burks. Now, unlike Bullock, Alec Burks is a playoff performing type of guy. And he's somewhere between a Derrick Rose and a Reggie Bullock. He's not on the level of Derrick Rose, but he's a little better in the playoff situation than Reggie Bullock. Of the rotation that Tom played this year, he's the worst defender of the rotation. Okay? So he's not a strong defender. He is a money player, though. He will hit you some money shots, as he did for the Knicks on multiple occasions this year. And he will score in a crunch time for you. Which makes him a dynamic possibility as a starter or a backup. He played the perfect role for him this year, coming off the bench in the second unit. He really did. And so I would not want, and Tom, because we were really short at the point guard position, he played Alec Burks at the point a lot. Fine. But I don't think Alec Burks is a natural point guard. See? So that will not address that situation. It's good to know that we have him there to play that role if we need to. But I don't want to count on him as a point guard. Okay, I don't want to have to count on him. I want him to be able to come off the bench and score, which he's very good at. Okay, so I think they bring him back. I don't think he gets a huge contract either. I'm thinking he's 29. 3 years, $27 million, $9 million a year. That's what I'm thinking for Alec Burks. Maybe $218 even. He'll get a $9 million. He got $6 million this past year. I see him in that $9 million range going forward. Okay, unless they raise the cap, and then he'll get more. But in the current cap situation, 116, 117 million, 3 years, 27 for Alec Burks is what I'm thinking. So they bring him back because Tom Thibodeau wants veterans. So you're gonna have Alec Burks, you're gonna have Derrick Rose, you're gonna have Reggie Bullock, you're gonna have Taj Gibson. You're gonna have those guys. Okay, Manuel quickly, we don't have to think about. He's locked up for the next 3 years. He's in. Okay, Mitchell Robinson. He has a team option on $1.8 million. If they exercise the team option, now I could be wrong on this, but my understanding is if they exercise the team option, he becomes an unrestricted free agent next year. I don't think the Knicks want that. I definitely don't want that. So you have to pay Mitchell Robinson. Now, you're not going to pay him what Clint Capella got. Clint Capella is the standard here to me because Clint Capella is what Mitchell Robinson should be. But he has not gotten hurt like Mitchell Robinson. He's been hurt too, but not like Mitchell Robinson. So Clint Capella got $96 million in his last contract. Mitchell Robinson is not getting $96 million. Okay? He's got all the talent in the world. I think he's going to be better than Clint Capella. But you don't have to pay him like that now because he hasn't proven anything. As far as that. So I'm thinking about half of what Capella got. So I'm thinking 4 years, 48 for Mitchell. That's 12 a year. I think that's a good number for him. I think it's a fair number for him. I think it reflects his value. And I think if I'm Mitchell Robinson, I do that and I give myself a player option in that fourth season. Because if he does blow up and becomes all NBA defense and anchors a defense that makes a deep run, he's gonna get Gobert money. He's gonna get Gobert money at that time. But that's not the case right now. So I think, and because of his injury, it actually saves us money. So I'm thinking 4 years, $48 million, $12 million a year for 23-year-old Mitchell Robinson is what I'm thinking. And that gets us to his prime. Okay, where he, if he shows out like the talent says he could, he's going to be really good. He's, like I said, he got the ability to be like Rudy Gobert. He's got that ability now. He's got the talent. Will he realize it? Will it come to the realization of it? Will it show up on the court on a season level basis? Okay, that's what we got to find out. But he's going to get his money this year. He's going to get something. He's not going to be going into this season at $1.8 million. They're not going to just let him go in unrestricted free agency. Now, caveat. I'm talking about Portland again. If I'm Portland and I'm going to lose Damian Lillard, one of the players I want is Mitchell Robinson. I want Mitchell Robinson. Okay, if I'm Portland. 23-year-old, runs the floor, defensive elite player. Give me him. And especially if I could get him to develop a little mid-range game, which I think he has the talent to do. He has the talent to do it. So I'm going to get other stuff, a lot of stuff. That's another thing. We're going to talk about that because if I'm Portland, I'm not giving away a top 5 all NBA player. I'm not doing that. You're going to have to pay me big to get Damian Lillard. Y'all need to think about that. And we'll talk about that. But not now. But so that's a possibility also. Portland might want. And see, if I'm Portland, and if Dame comes back and say, I don't like the coach you hired, I don't like what you're doing, I want out of here. Then that means to me, Portland blows the whole thing up and starts over. They blow the whole thing up and start over. They trade Dame, they trade McCollum, they trade whatever, they start with Anthony Simons, they start with keeping him and build around the young guys like that. They trade Powell and they go from there. If I'm Portland. And they're in a small market. It ain't like they in New York where they got crazy fans that are going to go crazy if they blow it all up. It's almost like Oklahoma City. So if I was them, I'd do that. If Dame wants out, I blow the whole thing up. And let's go from there. We get all the assets. It's a fire sale. But Dame is my diamond. That's my big diamond. I'm getting paid for him. See? So Mitchell Robinson might be included in something like that going forward. But other than that, he's going to be a starter for the New York Knicks this year at the 5. He's going to start the 5. He's going to come in hungry. He's going to come with a chip on his shoulder, ready to prove something. All that works good for the Knicks. Mitchell Robinson, to me, is special. Put it that way. I've been telling y'all that from when they drafted him in the second round. He's special. Okay? So I want him back. I think 1248 is a good number for him. So we're going to keep Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Derrick Rose, Alec Burks, Obi Toppin, Kevin Knox, Reggie Bullock, Taj Gibson, Emmanuel Quickly, Mitchell Robinson. Okay. Frank Nilokina. I think they sign him. I don't think they let him walk as an unrestricted free agent. I think they sign him. But he may be included in a trade. And if he is, I hope he goes to a playoff team because he would be very valuable to a playoff team coming off the bench. But let's see what happens. And I believe, they've been getting feelings about him for a couple of years now. So there's a number of possibilities. He can go to Spurs, he can go to Toronto, he can go to Clippers, he can go to Miami. There's a number of teams that would be interested in him. I think Marcus Smart might be out in Boston. The Boston might want him. I don't know. You're going to see. He's going to get it. There's a market for him. So they may sign him and trade him somewhere, for something. Look, they did that with Dennis Smith Jr., right? That's how we got Derrick Rose. They traded him, for a second rounder and Derrick Rose. If they could do that with DSJ, they're going to get something for Frank too. So, and they didn't even draft DSJ. He was a trade with the KP trade, which apparently we won. That's weird, isn't it? We won that trade, man. Y'all better come back and give Steve some props, man. Look like we won that trade. So anyway, Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Derrick Rose, Frank Nilokina, Alec Burks, Obi Toppin, Kevin Knox, Reggie Bullock, Taj Gibson, Vildoza. He might be included in the trade, y'all. I'm just telling you. He might be just a trade piece. But let's keep him for now. Emmanuel Quickly, Mitchell Robinson. I hope they bring back Pell. I like Pell. Y'all like Pell. I don't know about Theo Pinson. He's not guaranteed anything for the next season. He's not guaranteed anything. Him, Harper, and Pell, we don't know. They can sign two of them to a two-way deal. I don't know what they're going to do with them. I like Pell, though, because he brings that grit in defense. He really does. And so, and he's 28. He's a mature guy. So I'd like to see him come back and play that role for us, especially if we don't keep Nerlens Noel. We can bring back Pell very cheap and use him. Okay. Draft, we got 2 picks. Okay. I don't want y'all to delude yourselves. There is no rookie point guard in this draft that's going to play next year on the Knicks, except for Cade Cunningham. Any other rookie point guard that gets drafted is going to ride the pine. Period. Okay? Period. This is Tom Thibodeau we're talking about. And we just had Emmanuel Quickly, a Kentucky guy, who you knew they had to play because he's Kentucky. And he came off the bench. And a couple of times Tom got up in him and he got yanked. Okay? So don't think of some point guard that you're dreaming in the Knicks starting 5 next year. From the rookie class, I'm saying. No. We're going to get a veteran point guard. We're going to get a veteran point guard this summer. So forget the point guard. So to me, draft-wise, and we'll do another video on this, I like the kid Duarte out of Oregon State. He's an older guy. He's a wing that plays defense and has a good offensive game, mature offensive game. I think he's a possibility. And that's pretty much it. I don't see much else that the Knicks would get that would get any time on the floor next year. So, or unless they picked a point guard that can be developed over the next 2 or 3 seasons while a Lowry or, Alonzo or somebody or a Schroeder or somebody comes in and plays in front of them for a couple of seasons. But nobody's going to come in here next year except if it's Cade Cunningham and play. Nobody in this draft. As far as point guards. Not going to happen. Even Jalen Suggs, who I love, he would not play next year. I know you'll think I'm crazy, but they won't do it. Y'all got to know who your coach is. They're not going to do that. Okay. Now, even these rookies, your Jalen, your Green, your Kumbumba or whatever from the G League, they got to show something aside from highlights. I'm trying to tell you, they're going to get a chance. If we get one of them, they're going to get a definite chance to play. But under Tom Thibodeau, you better show something, especially on the defensive end in the high IQ. The highlight dunks ain't going to get you on the starting line. Okay? So we're going to see what happens. I don't know. They might package those picks for something. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Because there's really nothing there. We got, as far as the young guys we got, and we've been talking about this draft for a minute because of the talent coming. But, we got young guys. Emmanuel Quickly, Mitchell Robinson, young cats, man. And Obi Toppin. And then even we still got Frank. RJ. We got young guys already that's trying to scratch to get some minutes, man. Well, RJ got his locked up, but the rest of them. So I don't know. I think we're going to stick with this and go for some vets this time. Coming in this off season, we're going to be looking at some veterans to add to the vets we got. Tom is trying to win now. He just is. That's just how it is. Okay. So we'll see what happens. But so I think we're going to have the youth that we already have. We're going to get some veterans in the open market, either by trade or open market free agency. And we're going to seek to push forward the young people we got. That's, I think, what's going to happen. Some of the young people we got might get traded because trying to get a superstar. Okay, that's because we went from development first year, rebuild, because we came in 4th in the East. It's win now. Changes very quickly, didn't it? So we now from 4th in the East now, because we were going to be a losing team, 4th in the East. Now we're talking about win now. We're talking about Eastern Conference. They're going to try to push for the ECF, man. That's what's going to happen. And so I don't think we're ready for that yet. But then again, I didn't think we were going to be 4th in the East this year. So we'll see what happens. Have a good Monday. Shalom.